Hello and welcome everybody to this exclusive webinar on rethinking how and where we work. Ladies and gentlemen, I welcome you on behalf of Dell Technologies and Strategy. I am Kanchi Shah, General Manager for Content Strategy. As we all know, enterprise computing is essential to the success of many businesses. Pushing the limits of innovation with agility and performance is key when competing in today's environment. We've also seen that according to PwC's US Pulse survey, 22% of organizations said that returning employees to workplace has become a priority. As many companies prepare for employees to return to office, businesses are now faced with the challenge of adapting to a new work environment and navigating the evolving workplace landscape. Organizations are looking at optimized workplaces built around desktops that deliver more optimized and powerful performances to support processes and drive the desired business outcomes. Modern workplaces designed around the desktop as a vital infrastructure element are powered to maximize productivity, foster intelligent collaboration, and deliver the right kind of performance while ensuring safety, security, and manageability. And that's exactly what we're going to discuss through this webinar. Together, we bring a wide spectrum of IT and technology leaders to explore how they can deliver enterprise-wide productivity with integrated security, flexible form factors, and trusted IT support to power curated experiences that will actually fit right into your work domains. With that, ladies and gentlemen, we shall now go forward with a keynote where we have Pratik Tokas, Director for Strategy, who's going to take us through what workplace flexibility is and why it's time for all of us to return to office. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome back.
Thank you, Kanchi, for the introduction. Let's begin the discussion, which is a hot topic of debate across the organization between both employers as well as employees. Workplace flexibility. Is it time to return to office for work? Pandemic has hit us hard on various aspects. The very first being the physical impact, especially for those who got infected, single or multiple times. It has also hit us emotionally, affecting our mental health. Around 3 in 5 Indian professionals felt lonely at some point while working remotely during the early months of pandemic. Another major impact is culturally. It changed the way we socialize, the way we work. During the pandemic, the emergence of new workplace with remote working and work from home was a path-breaking human resource innovation made possible only by the new work technology. The work from home or remote work offered immediate benefits such as no commute, better self-care, as well as flexibility, which is no longer a benefit but a necessity among employees, and employers very well understand that. But the long-range effect will only come into view with time. Various long-range impacts are now becoming obvious and visible both at employee as well as employer level. The Indian Psychiatry Society reported a 20% increase in mental and health illness. The working culture is witnessing increasing level of employee loneliness. According to a survey conducted last year in the year 2022, employees in India reported high rate of burnout and distress symptoms. Around 38% of employees reported burnout signs frequently. On the other hand, another 38% of employees experienced moderate distress. This year, 2023, the flagship initiative of Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, the National Tele-Mental Health Program, has received a substantial sum of 134 crores. This clearly represents that Government of India is focusing on scaling digital mental health, which is a rising concern nowadays. Neuroscience research has found that only in-person interaction triggers the full suite of psychological responses and neural synchronization required for optimal human communication and trust building. and that digital channels such as video conferencing disrupts our processing of communicative information. Getting back into the office will give people a chance to change the monotonous or loneliness at home routine that's gotten used to and reintroduce them to the practice of going to the workplace once again. As far as talking about the organizations, work from home culture impacted businesses on various aspects: financial, operational, and tactical. Cyber concerns have increased with increase in the count of personal devices being used for office work. With the pandemic, everybody got ahead and had to work on something. That's where the personal devices got included. The employers or the businesses had to ensure that the employees are continuously reachable, are working, for which they had to build an external or extended IT infrastructure. This all required a lot of investment. Apart from that, a reduced company culture is witnessed among employees. When working remotely, it is more difficult to foster a sense of company culture and shared value within employees. This can impact employees' morale and increase retention as well. Employees also started to explore ways to get more engaged, maybe, or for say to gain more financial benefits. This is where the moonlighting trend got triggered more. With the lack of cross-functional communication, with limited or the virtual communication and the absence of on-premise communications with the peers, this work from home culture is also proving to be disastrous for innovation. I will share an example, which although was much before with respect to the time frame, this is an example of Pixar and Disney. One of the creative directors of Pixar Animation Studio wanted a traditional Hollywood studio with separate buildings for various projects and bungalows for the various development teams. But the Disney folks expressed their dislike towards this new campus because the teams felt isolated. So finally, they went to the other extreme. One huge building with a central atrium designed to encourage random encounters. Creativity comes from spontaneous meetings, from random discussions. This is also somewhat the logic why many organizations have an open office culture. What you might see as interruptions, distraction, or disturbances while working in the office could very well be critical interactions that you need, not just for work efficiency, but also for your overall well being. Coffee and lunch breaks, bumping into people while going around, gossiping at the water cooler, stopping by someone's desk for a small chit chat, or walk to the chai ki tapri. Colleagues talking in the background, sounds of keyboards. All these activities are vital for a worker's well being. So I would say this is the time when we return to office before we get permanently molded into a work from home culture, which not only impacts us to the core and changes our entire work DNA, but also impact the employers where they have to explore some extreme steps. So I would say, let's contemplate this option. In case if you have any questions, do drop me a mail, and thank you so much for listening.
Thank you very much, Pradeep, for taking us through that amazing keynote and showing us why it's time to work from office. Well, with that, ladies and gentlemen, it's time now to discuss the future of desktops in the new era of hybrid work. And to join me in this conversation, I'd like to welcome Mr. Vikas Kapoor, CFO and CIO for Travel Food Services, and with him, Mr. Akhil Gupta, Vice President for Engineering at Healthians. Let's welcome both of them and tune into this amazing conversation where we will discuss how the modern workplace is evolving and what exactly is needed for organizations to power productivity. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we've seen and taken that look of how employees are now returning to work and what kind of mandates organizations are placing around how and where we work from. This definitely needs to be rethought. So, on this webinar, where we are rethinking how and where we work from, I have in conversation with me two eminent business and IT personalities who are going to be in a conversation and take us through how resource optimization and the power of compute helps employees work within the office or outside as they would like to. Well, ladies and gentlemen, please join me as I welcome Mr. Vikas Kapoor, who is the CFO and CIO for Travel Food Services. Thank you very much, Vikas, for joining us.
Thank you. Pleasure. Good morning,
Also,
everyone. Yeah. Sorry.
also in conversation, we have Mr. Akhil Gupta, who is the Vice President for Engineering at Healthians. Welcome,
Hi,
Akhil.
hi guys, thank you. Happy to be here.
Thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining me today. And with that, I'm straight going to dive into the first question that I have in store for you. And this one, like I said, that we're seeing that organizations are asking people to return to work and are looking at ways to improve productivity, collaboration of employees by encouraging them to work from office for at least a few days a week, if not the whole week entire. How do you see the impact of return to work strategy or organizations like this? And may I ask this question of you, Akhil?
Sure. So here's the thing, right? Work from home, full work from home has been conceptually a very good idea. And for someone who's been in tech, we have been doing it for a very long time. Having said that, very early on, we have figured out that the best model has always been what is called currently a hybrid model, right? Wherein if you have something for which you need to collaborate with the team, then it's a better idea to be there in person. And other days, if the collaboration aspect is not that critical or it's not needed at all, right? Which is something that happens in tech. Then you have the freedom to work from home. So a balance between the two has always been a good idea, has been implemented in the tech industry even before COVID mandated it for all the businesses. So fortunately for my industry, motivating the team has not been that big an issue, but breaking the whole habit pattern of not coming to the office, it did require a little bit of work as team leaders, as employers, as the managers. I think what works is to actually do this in a way wherein they see value in it. If you mandate it in a way that you have to come 2 days, whether it is needed or not, that then becomes a compliance thing. That becomes a problem wherein you can get resistance. But if you legitimately give them reason, that the reason that you are expected here, not just because there is a roster, but because there is a need, and you yourself agree, there has to be mutual agreement with the team that this is better resolved kind of in person. And a good example for this will be cross-functional conversations, wherein when I'm talking to someone in my team, we speak the same language. It's easier and faster for us to kind of communicate ideas and resolve conflicts. But when we are talking to the various business functions who are basically my client, in all sense of the word, then you need to be open to kind of having a more personal and a more kind of, for the lack of a better word, conflict rich conversation. And doesn't matter how much the technology evolves, an in-person meeting is the best way of doing this. So I think a proper way of motivating them would be to get them to agree with the reason for which they are being called to the office.
Brilliant. I couldn't agree more. And yes, face-to-face conversations can obviously, like you said, bring out great collaboration, help in conflict resolution, and of course, drive better productivity. Vikas, would you want to take a stab in?
Yeah, sure. So our industry is slightly different to Akhil's. We are not completely a tech company. So we have operations at travel locations, so be it airports or restaurants, and we run F&B outlets across the country. So there is a sizable population of our team members who are working from these locations, who need to be at office every day, and not only in office, but 24/7, there are 3 shifts that are run. And then there is a back office, head office or a satellite office, which kind of works in a general shift kind of a scenario. So for us, it has been a challenging period because some members within the community are able to get easily a work from home, but in many other instances, we simply cannot afford to give a work from a home kind of a scenario to anybody. So it has been challenge. But what we have realized over the course during COVID and post that as well is that, like Akhil was mentioning, as long as you are giving that empowerment to the employee to decide for himself whether what works for him, and for constant conversation with his wider group whom he impacts, or the circle of influence as we may call it, as long as that group is comfortable with a person working remotely on a longer duration, we have allowed that employee to exercise that option. So it is more in terms of what kind of camaraderie you have, what kind of projects you are having on hand, or what kind of your deliverables are. And if your deliverables are such that you can converse with people remotely and deliver on those, then we have allowed that freedom to the employee. What we also went ahead and did is, some of the employees on the ground, which was a challenge for us, we ended up creating a situation wherein, like, for one day or for a half part of the day, they do work in a hybrid environment just to kind of test the waters. And we also realize how well they can perform in that kind of a scenario. So it's been a mixed bag for us. But what we have seen is, when you have given that empowerment and accountability to the employee, your attrition rates have fallen. Our industry is besieged by high attrition rates. So we have been kind of pioneers within our sector on that. And we have a dedicated policy which says that at least 6 days you can go work from home anyhow without taking any permission.
Absolutely. And I couldn't agree more, because businesses are now faced with the challenges of adopting to a new work environment and navigating the evolving work landscape, as we call it. Uh, Much of this, as both of you have pointed out, is centered around the employee and the employee's preferences and what the employee believes a good workspace is. Uh, so, I would like to know, what are some of the best practices around boosting that employee experience, powering productivity, and of course, resource optimization?
So
With
yeah,
us.
okay, please. Yes.
Sorry, let's go ahead. Okay.
Yeah. So I'll take that again. See, here's the thing, right? Once we have, as we discussed, we have agreed upon the reason for that. Now the idea is to make sure that when they are in the office, then they are able to deliver their maximum output, so that in the end, at the end of the day, they see that yes, coming to the office was a good idea. So the idea here is to give them all the resources that are needed for them to be as productive as they can be. If I'll take very small examples, if they are here primarily for meetings, right, then facilitating a seamless and a trouble-free meeting is something that it might look like not a big deal or something that you take for granted, but it does require a lot of orchestration from the behind, right? From to the extent that from the availability of a meeting room to tech resources that empower the meeting, right? That's a whole dance that the tech teams and the IT teams of a lot of offices have to dance. Kind of, if they come to the office, then they should be, having said that, when they come to the office, they should get extra resources. So the machine, I'll take again examples from my industry. The machines or the servers, the tech infrastructure specifically that I'm talking about, right, has to be much better than what they are used to at home, right? Smallest example being the internet speeds. If they get dedicated separate kind of laptops or desktops at office, they need to be higher specs. They need to have access to servers so that their development process, writing code, everything becomes much faster. So by doing this, the idea is that sure, they're doing the same, more or less the same work that they were doing at home, but they themselves see that happening at a much kind of higher quality, higher efficiency, and that is, I think, that does boost their kind of incentives and give them incentives to come back to the office.
Brilliant. Vikas.
So in our case, it's a kind of similar setup. We do end up a lot of marketing initiatives and a lot of projects that we end up executing because we are opening outlets as we speak, and it requires a certain amount of access to data and also visual representation either of the project site in terms of the layout of the F&B offering that we are planning to open, or be it as simple as a menu design or reinventing a particular brand that we are creating for a particular airport or something of that sort. So what exactly happens is there is a huge bunch of engineers and graphic designers and marketing visualizers who are constantly on the work. And these guys require a high amount of processing power. They require a much bigger screen to kind of understand how it will look in terms of a zoom in, zoom out kind of a quality, because not all your display screens will be of the same size. So they need to do all that wherein they need a certain amount of processing power. And for that very purpose, they do tend to prefer to come to office because the laptops simply don't give them that thing. The other angle, which I will definitely say is in terms of best practices, what we have done from a HR come employee perspective is we are trying to see if we can amplify the recognition or the connection program between the employees, which basically kind of creates that connect for them to improve on their productivity. Because if somebody is working remotely and somebody is working out of office, then how do you ensure that that team building, that camaraderie is kind of established, which gives you the best result? So a lot of HR initiatives are done in terms of that, wherein like you can play a virtual tambola on the screen, but it kind of motivates and brings in a certain element of joy.
Sounds interesting.
Fantastic. Some brilliant initiatives. Yes, Akhil, you were saying
I
something.
was just saying, sounds interesting. This whole
Yes,
Istanbul
it
initiative.
actually does. And I would love to be a part of one of those virtual
Yeah,
tombola.
yeah, absolutely.
Well, so we've talked about powering the employee experience, and both of you in your articulation touched upon the power of compute, how resources can be optimized, and of course, how employees can benefit from working off a certain machine. My question to you, and the next one is that machines per se need to meet specific needs and different types of workers for the job function of a company. How does a desktop come front and center in this? Vikas, can we begin with you?
Sure. So the desktop actually allows you a larger amount of processing power. Now, if you need a similar kind of a processing power from a laptop, the fact remains is you will end up spending way too much compared to what it is your requirement, number one. The other important thing is as inflationary trends are setting across, and COVID has kind of ensured that we do end up tightening our belt around the fiscal spends. Automatically, the companies have decided looking at alternatives wherein the security angle is taken care of much more, because with remote working also the challenges of people moonlighting and other aspects do come to the fore. Second is how do you ensure that the processing power that is required to give the best result is available to the employee, and that is wherein a desktop kind of wins hands over a laptop per se. And third and the most important thing is what kind of profile you have of employees within your organization, because there might be some who are working on the go, who are required to travel, and for them a desktop doesn't make sense. So you need to, like a hybrid work setting, you need to have a hybrid, how should I say, a laptop and a desktop policy in place, which says that okay, for certain profiles a desktop does make sense. It could be back off office, it could be for your designers, visualizers, project teams, engineering teams, and so on. But it might not be required for, say, some of the senior leadership because they just need to travel.
Absolutely.
So that's definitely the case. Also, what happens is sometimes desktops do give you one big advantage, and which we are seeing some of the requests that we get even from senior leadership is more in terms of like if you have to bend while working on a laptop, you would prefer a desktop more in terms of your posture and your physical capability in terms of seeing and working longer hours. So it kind of helps in that kind of a scenario as well.
Certainly, the ergonomics do come into play and help you with the postural impact. Akhil, your take on this?
Yeah, very much in line with Vikas. Kind of dollar to dollar comparison, a laptop is always going to be for the same cost much more. A desktop is much going to be much more powerful, and that is the most important factor for someone like me who's running a tech team. And Healthians is a tech startup. If you ask me, if you ask the founders, we Sure Healthcare is the product, but we are a tech startup. We have a huge tech team. So processing power is something that is our priority. And if that comes at a cheaper cost, right, compared to a laptop, then desktop is a clear winner, right? The the few reasons desktops make sense to us other than this is also the ease of expanding, right? uh, right, again we're still in the whole realm of faster compute only, right? But upgrading a desktop in any manner, it may be it faster RAM, more storage, more peripherals, right? That is much more easier than a desktop. There's a possibility for a desktop to get maxed out once you have kind of filled all the slots, but that does not really happen with a desktop. So that is a major impact for us. So considering that we have to do a lot of machine learning, AI based work, huge amount of data work, huge amount of programming that needs to be done, desktop are a clear winner. Apart from that, kind of minor, not really minor for someone in tech, right? Us developers are used to a multi-screen setup, right?
Hmm.
I have, ever since I started my career, have always had a multi-screen setup, even at home. So that is easier or actually very natural in a desktop, right? I started my career in fintech with hedge funds and investments. So I started with four screens. I started my career with four monitors, which is simply not possible unless you spend a lot of money with laptops. So that the extensibility, the cost, and one model, the hybrid model that Vikas mentioned, the way we do it is that we the developers get dedicated desktops which stay at the office, and then they get lightweight laptops, right? Through which they can connect to the desktops, the more powerful desktops in the office, and then they can work. So this gives them the freedom to work from home,
Hmm.
enjoy the same powerful machine that the desktop provides, without having to carry a bulky laptop, because a more powerful laptop is bulkier, it generates a lot of heat, and then you are tied to that laptop. Right now the way it works is, if you have the dedicated machine at office that you can connect to, then you can basically, even if you have security protocols in place, you can connect to it through any machine, right? Even something like a Chromebook, which is basically just meant for browsing, but as long as it can connect to internet. So these are the reasons that kind of we prefer desktops a lot over laptops.
Fantastic. And like you both said, yes, desktops have the capability to maximize productivity, like you've outlined, foster the kind of intelligent collaboration that organizations are looking for the right kind of performance, and delivering the kind of powerful compute that organizations are looking for those intensive applications and job functions. Um, Brilliant. My next question, and Akhil, I'd like to begin with you with this question. What I'd like to understand from you is that what are some of the key features that you would particularly look from a computing device that could actually support the kind of processes that your organization looks for and drive the related business outcomes?
Absolutely. So again, as we touched upon this in the previous question also. So the extensibility of the device, right? Extensibility basically means that horizontal as well as vertical. And when I say horizontal, I basically means if I want to add peripherals, right? We are working in health tech. We want the machine to be able to connect to different kinds of healthcare devices. Oh, that kind of extensibility, and vertical, as in if I require more uh, compute power, more RAM, more processing power, more storage. The ease of doing that, that is one of the biggest criteria for me, right? This is with the assumption that the original purchase or acquisition was made with a very defined kind of specs, right? You have specs, you buy things, but the more value that I can get from that asset, right? That is directly affecting my bottom line, right? These are purchases, and if you go by Moore's law, right? Kind of processors are getting faster every year. Every year, the processing speed is getting doubled. No, not really doubled, but yeah, it's still getting faster. So what I purchased today will almost be obsolete within a couple of years. By 3 years, it is absolutely definitely obsolete. Now, I do not want to be in a situation where I have to liquidate this asset. That's not kind of good for business. And Vikas spoke very well about the whole post-COVID kind of tightening of belts that is required. So if we can repurpose the same hardware with some modifications, right? That is the best way forward. If we can swap out components, if we can add new components with the same setup, then that is what I'm looking for. Other than that would be another aspect would be repairability, right? These desktops are relatively much easier to maintain and repair, and someone who is running again, this is no longer unique for someone in tech. Every business is now running, everyone is working on laptops only, or computers only, desktops only. So but kind of it's very difficult for a developer to move from one machine to another. So faster repairability, faster maintenance is very important for us. So these are the two key features that I look for when I am choosing any kind of compute. That the same logic goes for my server acquisitions also.
Thank you, Akhil, for outlining that. Vikas, what would you
Uh,
look?
So adding to what Akhil said, I won't repeat the same thing. Computing power does become relevant. As I said, ergonomics do have a play because at times you are working for pretty long hours. And even with laptops, the request from people for a laptop stand to kind of jump it up or
Hmm.
access to a screen to kind of see does. But also one important aspect that people do tend to forget is that the repairs, as Akhil was mentioning, in laptops tends to be very expensive at times. So suppose because of the touch capability of some of the laptops, what happens is people do tend to go for those. But God forbid something happens, a simple camera replacement or even a touch screen replacement is equivalent to the cost of the laptop in the first place. So you do tend to shun away from such devices unless and until it's for senior leadership. But for heavy duty work, which requires more hours to be spent on the machine, you do look for an ergonomic solution with a better computing power. Uh, we end up using a lot of Bloomberg terminal, which is basically a fixed terminal for treasury operations. And the beauty of it is it can be run on a machine, but still from a result perspective, people tend to prefer it more as an example, uh, mainly because of the multi-screen access that you can get it on a desktop environment. So it basically depends on the role, I would say, of the computing power and the scalability that you can give in a desktop.
Brilliant. So we've established that desktops can power some of the brilliant outcomes that organizations are looking at with the kind of computing power and optimization that it can bring to the fore. Uh, my next question, and this is my parting question because I do have a view on the clock. So, Vikas, from you, what I would like to know is that we've touched upon how desktops can be central to an organization while processing all the outcomes. But coming to the data and the information that these machines process, some of this is very sensitive. And in your case, since you have restaurants and food services across the globe, you deal with a lot of financial information, which is sensitive, of course. Um, how can a desktop help you better control access to this sensitive information and minimize the risk of data breaches?
So definitely a desktop can have a lot more capability in terms of security and access control. in a laptop kind of a setting, you simply can't be. We work in a industry wherein we have to put in bids for each and every site that we win. So we are bidding constantly across airports, and our bids are like time based. They need to be very specific. And in most of the cases, we are dealing with the governments of various lands, which are constantly working on an L1 kind of a scenario. So without sounding like an 80s movie kind of a scenario, but every bid you can lose a bid for $1,000, to be fair, because the way it is. So for us, data is extremely sensitive, even in terms of concepts that we are kind of building in terms of FNB and everything. We simply can't allow that data to leak up. And with heavy attrition, that becomes a big challenge. And people do have access to mobiles and can take snaps of things. But what we have understood over a period of time is your cyber security and other aspects are much more easily deployable on a desktop than on a laptop. What exactly happens is with the laptop, still the machine is moving out of a physical environment. So that kind of opens up a whole Pandora of accountability and trust on your employee in terms of that data not to be shared. Okay, so you can put monitoring devices, you can disable the USB flash drives and stuff like that, both on desktops and laptops. The fact remains is in one case, the device is stationary in your office, which could be under a CCTV, whereas in another case, it could be moving with the person and it becomes very difficult to control. So in spite of having the controls there, the physical aspect of the device acts as one more layer of security, to be fair.
Akhil, your take on this?
Again,
And you,
yeah,
of course, in the healthcare industry are dealing with health data, which is a gold mine for people actually.
agreed, again. So again, Vikas has very eloquently, more or less, mentioned all the key points. But as you mentioned, right, there is a a lot of external severity of our data, right? Sure, Vikas has kind of his bids to protect, but what I am basically protecting is data, healthcare, critical healthcare, personal data for people like us only, right? Our peers, our family, our friends. So that way, security is not just something that is kind of forced upon us by the audits and the certifications, but also something that is the DNA of the organization. So in that sense, right, again, the centralization of a desktop really adds a lot of value. So since they are all at the office physically, the desktops are there, they are part of the network, and the network. So I just need to make sure that the network is secure, right? If my entry, so I'll phrase it this way: the fewer entry points I have in my system, the fewer guards I need to post, fewer kind of chances of lapse are there. The problem, as Vikas also mentioned, with laptops is that if the work, the core work that is being done is that on the laptop, then it can physically walk out of the office. But if the thin client model that we discussed a little time back, right, the core work is being done in the office desktops only, which are being connected from outside using laptops. So the work never leaves the office, work, data, whatever. The traffic that travels between the machine at the office and the machine at home, that is something that I have control over. I can monitor, I can have kind of literally machine learning models constantly checking to make sure there are no nefarious activities going on. I have whatever antivirus or anti-spamware, scamware thing that I can install on a laptop, I have something much bigger deployed on a network scale at my office for a firewall. So this centralization opportunity that I get, again, this is something that comes more from kind of work from office, even if you're not working at physically at the office. So that adds a lot of value to the lab, to the whole desktop thing. That also basically means that kind of I don't need to invest that heavily on people training. Sure, that's not a good idea to not invest in that, but human error is a little more excusable if I have more control over the hardware.
Brilliant. I couldn't agree more. So, both of you, thank you very much for outlining how those security features come into play and the fact that the desktop actually sits in a geofenced location where you have the kind of security protocols and a single internet connection, perhaps, or a monitored internet connection that actually helps you manage the access, control the environment, and of course, makes it simpler to roll out all the security patches that are required. So that's a brilliant takeaway for me from that conversation. With that, I think it's a close. Thank you very much, both of you, for your brilliant insights and sharing them with us on this conversation. So thank you very much for taking us through that. And the desktops are central and powerful for all of us. And like we said, that they're here to stay. So thank you very much for that conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kanchi. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity. Thanks.
Take care.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have the organizational perspective on what the modern workspace would look like and how it is that they are powering business outcomes with the right kind of devices and compute. Well, now it's time to take a deep dive into intelligence built in and modernization embedded on the next generation Dell desktops. And to take us through this segment, I have with me Mr. Sivaram Kumar, who is the Field Marketing Manager for the Client Solution Group at Dell Technologies. Let's tune into this conversation and see what the next generation Dell desktops have to offer. All right, ladies and gentlemen, with that, we now begin with our segment called Intelligence Building Modernization Embedded on the Next Generation Dell Desktops. And to take us through this, I have in conversation with me Mr. Sivaram Kumar, who is the Field Marketing Manager for the Client Solution Group at Dell Technologies. Welcome, Sivaram.
Hi, Ganchi. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for being with us today.
My pleasure. It's my pleasure.
As we've heard in the previous conversation, we have our organizational leaders who've taken us through what their workplace and how their workplace environment looks like, and what are their expected features from their computing devices. I'd like to delve deep into this conversation with you, Sivaram, to understand some of the finer nuances of these computing devices. And to begin with, I'd like to pose my first question to you, which is what are some of the key advantages of using desktops to power workplace productivity?
Yeah. So to start with, desktops are something which has been there in the system for a very long time. And if you look at most of the users, if you say desktops, they always have a think, okay, I've been given a desktop and not a notebook. That's something is a differentiation which everybody talks about. But exactly at Dell, that's not the case. At Dell, we have the Optiplex series of desktops. And this is one product lob which has been there with us for more than 30 plus years. And this current year, we are celebrating 30 years of Optiplex launch. So Optiplex desktops is something which Dell has launched 30 years ago. And we have been innovating it every now and then. And we call it as intelligence you can rely on. That's the tagline with the Optiplex desktops. The reason advantages of Optiplex or the desktops as such is these are systems which are upgradable, and these are systems which are quite robust. And when I say robust, you'll have a lot of questions popping up saying that how do you say it's robust? It occupies a lot of space. But that's not the case with an Optiplex series of desktops at Dell. We have something called as the form factors. So we have the micro form factor, we have the small form factor. So these are quite small miniature kind of desktops, which will not even be a size of a desktop modem. We have a micro form factor desktop, which is just a size of a modem. So what happens here is the first and foremost thing, these are highly reliable systems. And these are systems which can be upgraded based on the functionality changes the user has. And we have a lot of statistics going around with both hybrid. So currently, I don't want to call it as hybrid. I call it as work from anywhere. And we always find people talking about an extra screen onto it. So these are things where desktops comes into. We have statistics which says the productivity of an user goes up once you get an extra desktop or an extra screen. So this is the first and foremost functionality or an advantage of having a desktop is the upgradability. The second thing is all the current desktops are desktops which are future ready. When I say future ready, they have come up with a graphical representation. If you're looking at, there are desktops which are VR ready. So VR, XR, which has been the virtual reality we have been talking about, that's no more only with the notebooks or the workstations, it's there with the desktops also. And these are more robust and more reliable because
Hmm.
any kind of change you want in the process that can be done using a desktop. And another point, if I look at the, we talk about everything, but still one thing everybody talks about is the cost part. So
Hmm.
if you take the desktops, they have a cost advantage in comparison to the other devices too, because these are devices which basically fits into your requirement, and you can basically take a system what you need at that point of time. And if you're looking at upgrading it, that is also possible. And other biggest point with Dell Optiplex series of desktops advantages, these are intelligent desktops. So the reason for this being intelligent is we have an inbuilt solution called as a Dell Optimizer,
Mhm.
which basically understands how a user uses the system. And these are a lot of things wherein there are three, four things which a Dell Optiplex or an optimizer helps you in a desktop is one is it allows you to do something called as an Express Connect. When I say an
Hmm.
Express Connect, if you have uh, if you're working in an environment where you have multiple Wi-Fi networks
Hmm.
and you always have to go and check out which is having a stronger band, that's not the case with an Optiplex desktops of Dell, which has a Dell optimizer in it. The Wi-Fi card can by itself identify the network with the strongest signal and connect to it. So
Hmm.
these are certain things I think we will discuss in details on this, but these are certain advantages of using it. And also another thing, the biggest advantage with desktops is these are systems which have been there for a very long time, and any kind of work, right from a very simpler process to a highly complicated graphical or a VR or a virtual reality can also be embedded into that single form factor. So the disadvantage used to be with desktops is going to be size, which is no longer with the Optiplex, Dell Optiplex series, because we have the small form factor, we have the micro form factor. So these are the smaller ones. So I think these are some of the advantages of using a desktop in general.
Brilliant. And you've laid down very brilliantly what could actually be the tenets and the foundations of productivity through using the Optiplex series. And while we are talking about this, in the previous conversation that I had, both Akhil and Vikas have laid out that what they look for from a desktop environment is rolling out upgrades easily, which you've already covered in your articulation, and of course, the power of compute. Uh, and while they're looking at that, organizations are also looking at simplifying the ability to deploy, secure, and manage, and of course, support work environments. So, could you just walk us through how automated solutions enable them in achieving this?
Okay, so if you take Dell, Dell, we have an automated solutions at two sides of a coin. So when I say two sides of a coin is the biggest challenge we were having during the post-COVID or after even after COVID, when we were totally in a remote work and we were getting into hybrid or we were getting into work from anywhere, was how do I get the system onto the users? So what was happening is every organization wanted their users to be productive from day one. So that is not something which is going to happen without the kind of an IT support you get at your office or you're connecting from your home, but you still need that productivity from the click of a button. That's where Dell started focusing on something called as end user experience. So any system which goes from Dell, a desktop or a notebook or a workstation, any of our lobs which we have is preloaded with solutions or softwares which are required for the user. That's the first thing we do. So as soon as the system reaches the user, they'll be in a position to use it immediately. They don't have to go to the IT. They just have to log into their user ID and password, and they are productive from day one. The second part of automated solutions is the desktops which we supply currently are ones which are capable of virtual reality. I'm talking about virtual reality is one of the highest end of graphical representations I'm talking about. So these are systems which are VR ready, XR ready. So
Hmm.
that's the one of the other automated solutions which we do. In addition to that, we also discussed previously about this desktops being intelligent. So the second part or third part here is the desktop understands what is the user's function when he switches on the system. If he is a guy who is going to check only the Outlook, if he's somebody who's going to work on the Excel as soon as he starts the system, or if somebody who's work on a programming language, the complete RAM or the memory is being used to that particular solution or software so that the user can use it without any kind of hindrance. So these are certain things which we are working on the automated solution part. And Another thing with the desktops at Dell is we have desktops which goes basically for the industry segment. For example, if you're looking at a retail kind of an industry or a retail kind of a segment, or if you're looking at segments where they have a lot of space constraint, but they're looking at a lot of work to be done, we have desktops automated for that. So it's straight away plug and play types. So they have a monitor set, they have the whatever space is given to us, we can do that. We also have desktops which are called as the XE4. We call it as the OEM devices. These are specialty desktops. So as part of the specialty desktops, what happens here is these are desktops which can be used in the manufacturing shop floors, which can be used in certain particular functionalities where you need more heat resistance or you need more dust resistance and but higher computing. So these are other desktops which are currently available. We also, in addition to this, in the Optiplex series, we have the entry level, or we call it the essential desktops, the 3000 series. Then we have the 5000 series, which is more of the mainstream. And then the 7000 series, which is the specialty series. So
Mhm.
these are certain series of desktops which is available with us, where automated solutions are embedded based on their functionality and also on the industry segment.
It's absolutely brilliant. You've actually walked us through how, different desktops can actually meet the specific needs of different types of workers and job
Correct.
functions within a company. And while you've done that, what I would now like to ask you is that you've touched upon the AR and the VR piece in your responses. I would like to dwell into the AI part of it. So
Okay.
my next question to you is that how do desktops with built-in AI help in supporting processes to drive the desired levels of business outcome for organizations?
Okay, so as part of the Dell series of desktops or our notebooks or workstation, we have a software called as the Dell Optimizer. It's a
Mhm.
free downloadable software that no charges attached to it. And this is basically an artificial intelligence machine language enabled solution. So as part of the desktops, if you take, this basically does three functionalities. First is the express response. So as I told you in the previous thing which we discussed, that in case a user, it's like intelligence where the system understands what are the common functionalities done by this particular user, or what does this user do for a majority period of time, or what does the user do when he first launches the desktop, or whenever he switches on the desktop, what is that he does on the first go. That's something we call as the express response. So as part of it, what the desktop does here is it clearly understands the user behavior. And once he switches on the system, as the person wants to check onto an Outlook mail, or is somebody who straight away gets into his kind of a coding, or somebody who straight away gets into the Excel, the memory or the more of the processing speed is sent to that particular software, so that the system works and he's also quite easily works on his desk. That's something called as the express response part of the artificial intelligence MI, called as the Dell Optimizer. This is something which is embedded in all our desktop series, and you can also download it. Even if you are a desktop user currently, also you can download it onto your desktop and start experiencing the artificial intelligence in it. The second thing is something called as the intelligent audio. So previous era, what were you discussing about? Pre-COVID, before COVID, used to talk about the corridor warriors. We used to talk about the table warriors, people who sit on the table from morning 9 to evening 6, or those who have a laptop in their hand and keep walking along with headphones and all that. But currently, we are in an era of what? Zoom warriors or team warriors. These are people who are on Zoom calls and team calls. So what do they require there? They require their audio to be quite clear. Maybe they may be talking to a customer, maybe they're talking to a stakeholder. Whatever I want to communicate to you needs to be clearly said to you. And whatever you want to communicate to me, I also need to clearly hear it. So that's the importance of audio in it. So in Dell series of the Optiplex desktops, as part of the Dell Optimizer, we have something called as the intelligent audio, which is also embedded along with the Dell Optimizer, which works along with neural networks. It cancels all the noises other than the human voice. So even if you're working on a very crowded neighborhood, or you have your neighbor's dog barking by, you will not be able to hear it. And it also activates the same for both of them who are communicating. So that's part of our Dell optimizer called as the intelligent audio. And then the most sought out thing currently. So everybody will think, okay, job satisfaction, all this is there, but how does our day starts and ends? How does a day goes bad? if you don't get internet connectivity on any one of your devices, we do not get a 4G or your house Wi-Fi is down. It's like previously the problem was when you don't get milk, when you don't get electricity, but that's all taken care. Now people are okay with it, but they are not okay without an internet, right? So that's something which we have done here is called as express connectivity, where the if you're working in a network or if you're in a particular kind of an environment where you have multiple Wi-Fi networks being there, what do? We will try to go see the signal, whichever is having a stronger strength, you select it manually. That's not going to be a case if your system has a Dell optimizer. We call it as the Express Connect. Your Wi-Fi or your desktop will automatically connect to the Wi-Fi signal, which is the strongest. Hence, you do an uninterrupted work all throughout. So these are certain artificial intelligence innovations which we have started on our desktop series also. So we wanted to be very clear that this AI or AI ML Dell optimizer is not only for the notebooks and only for the workstation, but that's also for the desktops. And we thought we touched the three vital parts of a particular thing. That's what I said: the audio, the connectivity, and the response. So all these three are covered by the Dell Optimizer 3.0 as part of the AI ML enabled desktops. Hope I answered your question, Kanchi.
You did, and actually in quite an extensive manner. Thank you very much, Sivram, for that brilliant answer. With that, I do have a view on the clock, so I would like to ask you my parting question. And this final question that I would like to ask you is that you've actually taken us through a whole lot about what the Dell desktops have and what new features do these new series have to boast about. Uh, how does this entirely play into how everybody is rethinking the way and from where they work? So,
See, the point here is since we've been talking about, we've been discussing on something called as work from anywhere, desktops play a quite important role here. The reason being, if you are stationed at your residence, you can always have a desktop there. And if you think space is your constraint at your residence, you can always have a second system there. And if you think office is something I want to work most of my time or majority of my time, you can always set up a desktop there. And what the level of technology growth that has happened on the desktops are, they are on par with any of your computing devices. That's something which we need to first understand. Secondly, the desktops which we are currently offering at Dell are also AI and artificial intelligence called as the Dell Optimizer. And third part is we are not talking about the brown color box or the silver color box which used to be kept below your leg and you always feel bad about it and you have cables running here and there and all that. That's not the desktops we are talking about. I'm talking about a completely innovated product called as the form factors, which has the small form factor, micro form factor, and we have your cables are just so a single point of cable. It's no more shabby workplace. So that's something which is being taken care. And we have done innovations in such a way that the desktops are also VR and XR enabled. So that's something which is an in thing currently. So I think desktops currently are on par with any of your computing devices. And based on your work style and based on your work timing you try to work on, I think that system which chooses you the best at the place you work should be a desktop if you're a person who's sitting at one location. And if you're a person looking at multiple location, you should have one situation with a desktop so that you understand what you get on the upgradability part also, because laptops can also be upgraded but only to an extent, but that's not the case with the desktop. We can extend it to any levels you want if you go with the 5000 and the 7000 series of desktops from Dell Optiplex. I think I've done that part, Kanji.
thank you very much, Sivram, for taking us in detail with all that the new generation Dell desktops have to offer. You've actually taken us through all the features and everything that they have to offer in detail. Thank you once again.
Thanks,
Very
Sanjay. And it was your questions were quite good so that I was able to run through the whole portfolio of Dell. Thank you so much for that. Thank you. Thank you. It's my pleasure
thank you.
interacting with you,
Thank
Kanji.
you very much, Sivram.
Thank you.
With that, ladies and gentlemen, it's a wrap at today's exclusive webinar on rethinking how and where we work. Ladies and gentlemen, we'd like to thank all of you for having taken out your valuable time to be with us, but are going to request 2 more minutes of your time to fill in the feedback form. Your feedback is invaluable to us as it helps us improve the content, structure, and delivery of our conferences. Thank you once again, everybody, on behalf of Dell Technologies and Strategy. With that, we look forward to welcoming you at our upcoming conferences and webinars. Until then, stay safe, stay healthy, and enjoy the rest of your day.